Hi everyone, this is Paul from the Magdalene Centre. Today I'm doing the astrology report for Chiron Retrograde, which begins on the 4th of July in Aries and will finish in Pisces on the 8th of December, with Chiron moving backwards from Aries into Pisces on the 26th of September. So I'll be outlining some of the key themes of this particular retrograde and some of the key lessons we can potentially learn from it. But before I do that, I just want to clarify that the astrology doesn't control us in any way, shape or form. It merely helps us to understand what the spiritual energies around us are doing, what kind of spiritual lessons we need to be learning at this time in order for us to grow and move forwards, and identify how we can make better use of the energy so that we're responding to it rather than reacting. Now, in terms of Chiron retrograde, for those of you who may or may not be familiar with Chiron, Chiron is an asteroid/comet that orbits between Saturn and Uranus, and it's generally seen as the bridge between the mundane reality and the realm of the soul, in the sense that, generally speaking, for us to move out of operating from our ego and start working from our soul or operating from the soul, it requires that we face certain key wounds within us. So Chiron is the wounded healer. His glyph looks like a key because whilst Chiron represents wounds, it also represents the keys to our own wholeness and how we can heal. Now, when Chiron is retrograde, this is a time where some of the wounds that may have been festering unconsciously start to become better known for us, because we become more aware and more attuned to the kinds of wounds that we're holding on to. So, with Chiron in Aries, Aries is the first sign of the zodiac and generally represents the rebirth of the ego, with the ego obviously being a necessary vehicle for us to interact with the world, to achieve any goals that we want to make manifest, and for us to pursue any kind of course of action. Without the ego, this wouldn't be possible. But with Chiron here, we're looking at the wound to the ego. So ego is also helps us to get a better idea of our sense of self or how we interact with it. But Aries, as well as the ego, also is about that spark of self-identity and awareness. And Chiron here is asking us to reflect on, where is this sense of self wounded? Where's the ego itself wounded? So we struggle to commit to any kind of action that will empower us because we don't really have a clue who we are, or it's an almost overzealous pursuit of action to try and create some kind of sense of identity through our actions, because with Aries it can sometimes operate from the level of I am what I do, so if I'm not doing anything, I'm nothing. This is the lower end of Aries though. So with Aries it's about separating action from identity, so our actions are informed by our identity, they're not the foundation of it. With Chiron here, we're looking at, where are we wounded? Where do we hold on to wounds to the sense of self? So by this we're looking at, what typical words do we usually say after the words I am? Because I am is basically defining our sense of who we are, and whatever words we put after the words I am define that sense of identity. So it's learning to be mindful of what words we're typically using and to be more conscious of this. Do we typically say words that are negative and limiting, like I'm not good enough, or I'm stupid, or I'm inadequate, or I'm not worthy of love, or any of these issues? Or is it empowering? Is it I am worthy of love and belonging, I am capable of achieving things, I am worthy of pursuing these goals? So it's paying attention to this. With Chiron in Aries, it's more likely that we'll be identifying, where do we limit our sense of self-identity, or where do we keep ourselves back from achieving our goals, because we're constantly using negative self-talk that stops us from taking any kind of action. So with Chiron in Aries, we're also looking at, how can we use things like affirmations to heal our sense of self? So how can we change our self-talk? How can we change the choice of words we use after the words I am to empower ourselves rather than to curse ourselves through limiting our sense of who we are? And this goes on until the 26th of September, when Chiron moved backwards into Pisces. So this is like a first taste of Aries coming to an end, But in around about the 19th of February next year, Chiron will move back into Aries properly and will not move out of Aries for about 7 or 8 years. So it'll be a long transit. This is our first taste of it. So this is also an opportunity for us to see how are we manifesting this Chiron in Aries transit so far, since it first moved into Aries in April. How are things going so far? Are we becoming more aware of our own self-talk and how we either empower ourselves or disempower ourselves with our self-talk? So what words we're using after the words I am. So, and this will give us an idea of kinds of the areas that we'll need to be working on ourselves over the next 8 years. But as I said, on the 26th of September, Chiron will move into Pisces. We've already had about 7 years of Chiron in Pisces, but this is our final taste of Pisces for over 40 years now, in terms of Chiron in Pisces. And Chiron in Pisces highlighting those wounds of disconnection. So it's where do we still need to close off the old cycle because we still have unfinished business or unprocessed wounds from the old cycle. And with Chiron in Pisces, we're looking at wounds of disconnection. So these manifest in all kinds of ways. For some people, it's with drug addiction. It could be in an addiction to sugar to try and numb emotions. It could be addiction to people through codependency. It could be addiction to alcohol. There's so many different things that we're addicted to. For some people, it's addiction to work to try and numb the emotions. So losing ourselves in work so that we don't actually have to deal with how we're really feeling. And Chiron in Pisces helping us to is learning how do we break free of this tendency to pursue substitutes for that sense of connection, and what can we cultivate instead in order to create that authentic connection with God, the universe, spirit, whatever you choose to call it. Chiron in Pisces is highlighting the wound to this connection, and how can we build that for ourselves? How can we learn to let go of the substitute methods that we use to try and cultivate this connection, get real with ourselves so we identify the shadow drives that are driving these particular addictions, and how can we learn to surrender to the infinite, to God, to spirit, whatever word you feel most comfortable with. How can we learn to surrender and let go of the ego, let go of this illusory self, and embrace our soul self? So allow the ego to be dissolved so that it can be transformed. And about how can we learn to allow that universal connection to build or create within us, and how can we allow universal love, compassion and empathy to flow through us, healing us in the process, but then creating an environment that encourages other people to heal themselves in the same way. This doesn't mean that we try and save other people or engage in any kind of saviour complex, because people have to make the choice to go down the path of healing. It's not something we can force on anyone. If someone doesn't want to heal, it doesn't matter how much we try and help them, they're not going to heal unless they're ready to do that. But for those of us who choose to engage with the process, this last transit of Chiron in Pisces from 26th of September, when Chiron retrogrades into Pisces, and then up until the stationary direct on the 8th of December, and from there up until around about the 19th of February 2019, this is an opportunity for us to heal once and for all the wounds of disconnection, and to cultivate that connection with spirit, so that we no longer have these addictive tendencies. We no longer rely on cheap substitutes to try and achieve the same alteration in consciousness that that all addiction is driven by. It's learning to connect authentically without the need to numb ourselves in the process, or without need for any kind of substitute connection. How can we connect with our emotions, connect with universal love and compassion, and how can we learn to cultivate these qualities so we can give them to ourselves first, so we top ourselves up to overflowing with love, and then that overflowing love helps the people around us. Because if we can achieve this connection with that universal love and allow it to flow through us. This then sets us up nicely for the next cycle of Chiron through the zodiac, when Chiron moves properly into Aries, because that universal love sets us in good stead for healing the ego, to empowering it, so that it's making sure we don't get the impression that we are our egos. The ego isn't in control, but it's empowered so that it allows us to pursue the goals that we want to achieve, and allows us to push through any fears or barriers that we have inside ourselves, and commit to the actions necessary to empower ourselves and take and pursue the roads that is most empowering for us, but will also honour the people around us, because it's important that whatever we do is not pursued at the expense of other people. It needs to be something that will empower us, but will also serve to empower the people around us if they choose to undergo the path of empowerment. But as I said before, we can't force it on anyone else. It's not our responsibility to do that. It's our responsibility to heal ourselves through love and compassion, through changing our self-talk so we're not using limiting self-definitions that prevent us from pursuing the course of actions that would allow us to empower ourselves further. And if we undergo this, we can become much more powerful individuals, not in the sense of power over the environment, but internally empowered, so we know that the power is within us, we feel that connection with that power, and we use it wisely to make us strong, and enable other people to become strong by serving as a positive example and an encouraging example to other people, so that they can see that it's possible for them to make that shift as well. If we don't do the work ourselves, we're in no position to preach to anyone else or to tell anyone else what to do. We actually have to do the work ourselves if we want to be able to embody the positive qualities of Pisces and Aries, and to enable and to empower the people, or to serve as an example for the people what they can also achieve if they choose to take the same path of healing and greater personal wholeness. So may Chiron Retrograde bring you many insights and greater degrees of healing and wholeness. Take care and be blessed.